It's been years since we've spoken. I haven't spoken to you since the launch of Dark Horses, which was
Yes.
in 2016, I guess.
Yes, I remember because I was very excited because I know I used to get a ton of emails from Dark Horses and everyone used to think what it is.
Yeah.
And then obviously you guys are doing great now. And I keep telling everyone, I mean, you're one of the most prestigious agencies in the sports business world. And the work you've done is amazing, working from with Chelsea to Nissan to the FA, the mental health campaign with Prince.
Yeah.
So I think
it's been an amazing journey. Obviously, I saw that you did something with Matt recently. When was that? That was this summer, wasn't it? With Matt Redman.
Yes. It was earlier this year.
Yeah. So I'm obviously not at the agency anymore. Obviously, I'm still a shareholder, but I stood down. It's so strange. I sort of lose all concept of time, but I stood down last summer, so the summer of 2020, and now Melissa is running the agency, and it's been brilliant. And it's sort of we've been very lucky that very fortunate that we've navigated COVID fairly well. So yeah, it's obviously I've had a sort of what you could call a sabbatical at the worst possible time, which has been quite but it's been fascinating, and obviously it led me to what I'm doing now and the decision to launch a new agency.
Yeah, but I would still want to know more about you and your Dark Horses connection as well, because that would ultimately lead me to what you're going to currently start doing. So firstly, Simon, because, I've never asked you in depth about your journey. So tell me about that. Why did sports interest you so much? And how did you start your journey in the sports realm?
It's a good question. I'd always been a passionate follower of sports fan, but I actually studied law at university and the law degree, then went to law school and qualified as a lawyer. And actually, it was only a bad experience in the legal profession that actually led me to work in the world of sport. I basically, after working in the city for a few years, didn't really enjoy it, was, I think, out of place, had problems with anxiety that led to depression, and ultimately found myself at a bit of a life crossroads as to what I should do. And I'd spent so many years studying to be a lawyer, and that's what put me on the path to sport. And the first real step into the world of sport was that of, I suppose, sports memorabilia. I actually opened a sports memorabilia shop in London. That was my first venture in sport. I was very fortunate that I've been a lawyer, and through that had met another sportsman. And that ultimately led back in, I guess, 2004 to 2008 to me actually becoming a sports agent back then. But I've had many sort of hats in the world of sport. And as you know, most recently between 2014, I had the opportunity to go into BBH and help set up BBH Sport, which is a fascinating experience. And then in 2016, with the fans of
law into something which is very creative and very different from your sports law. I think that was a good leap on your part. And then obviously after BBH, Dark Horses. I mean, you in a very, very short time, you've managed to build it as a very reputable, esteemed agency. So what prompted you to start Dark Horses when you did initially?
Well, Dark Horses was very much born out of what I'd seen at BBH, and BBH is a fantastic agency, and BBH Sport, we made some amazing work, but I felt that things could be done slightly differently, and in a bit more of an entrepreneurial way. I think BBH was blessed with a lot of fame, a lot of amazing people there, but it was obviously quite a big business. And some of the brands that we wanted to work, or I wanted to work with, and some of the businesses I wanted to work with were what you'd call probably disruptors or those in the startup space. So didn't really have the budgets. And so, it was a meeting with Helen, Danny and Andy, the founders of Lucky Generals, that probably in spring of 2016 that led to Dark Horses. And as you know, because I remember we were in touch at the time, it was sort of, it started off as me, one person, and I was very fortunate to be able to borrow the resource of Lucky Generals. And fast forward 5 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 6 years, I guess, 6 years or 5 years. Yeah, the agency's doing really, really well. Obviously, as I mentioned, I stood down in the summer of 20. Melissa stepped up in autumn of 2020, which is over a year ago now. And they've had a really good year. And yeah, the agency's going from strength to strength. It's great to see.
Great. Yes, that's amazing. And, we keep getting emails, and of course, we keep following the amazing work they're doing. Which brings me to the next part of your journey, Simon, which you're going to start soon. So tell us about this new venture, I should say, Hero. That's what you're calling it. So tell us more about it.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So obviously, as I mentioned previously, I started life. Well, one of the first areas of sport I went into was that talent management, and I was very fortunate to look after some well-known rugby players, a few retired footballers, and footballers back in, I guess, the mid, probably around 2008 to 2012, maybe a bit after that. And it was an industry I was fascinated with. I had very good relationships within the world of professional sport. As I said, I was a qualified lawyer, so I had the skills commercially. And really, I suppose, to be brutally honest, just a few incidents and events that took place around that time working in that space just sort of left a bit of a bad taste. And so when the opportunity at BBH came along, I leapt at it. And so, over the last 7 years, I have kept my hand in. I've kept relationships with talent. I've worked with some talent over the last sort of 7 years alongside Dark Horses, which has been great. But yeah, I suppose this year, when having the time to think about what to do next, I suppose there was a bit of an itch that still needs to be scratched. And I think what has happened over the last 6 years is that I've learned a hell of a lot about brand strategy and creative. And not just that, I think with the advent of what you'd call athlete activism, I think that a lot of sports personalities are excited and interested in using their platforms they now have to do good. And I think that some of the contacts that I have and some of the, I suppose, the strategic nous that I have, I can help them do that. So I think when the world is a very different place to when I was an agent previously, and I'm a lot brighter, have better contacts. So hopefully, yeah, it could be really exciting. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, the name Hero I've chosen for a number of reasons, but I think it's probably not the reason that most people would think. That it's more about actually, as I said, using the platform that these guys and gals have to actually do good, as well as obviously help them commercially.
Great. So what's your clientele like right now? Who all are you on your roster?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate because obviously not many people get to launch a business with a client list. So the founding clients will be Chris Kamara, who is a very well-known broadcaster you probably know in the football space. Chris retired from playing sort of 30 years ago, but now is a very well-known broadcaster, and he does lots of work with various brands. In fact, he was shooting some work with Dark Horses today, which is really nice. It was really cool. So that's quite appropriate. And then a young England Rugby League player by the name of Cruz Leeming, who made his England debut last month. So he's really exciting. And obviously the Rugby League World Cup's taking place in England next year. A young Nigerian female footballer called Ini Umatong. Ini plays for Lewis FC. Great footballer, and I'm going to be helping Amy moving forward with all her commercial matters off the field. And then Ryan Sidebottom, who's a retired English cricketer, who's been, obviously quite big in the broadcast space with the Ashes starting next week. Ryan will be doing a lot of work around that, so that's really exciting. And then there's a few people that a couple, I can't say whom just yet, but in the new year they'll become very apparent. And I think what I'm very keen to do is sort of, obviously there's at present I'm launching with just me, and in the business that I'm moving into, these are personal relationships and they need a lot of attention. So, at the moment, having those 5, it's a lot for me. I need to then start to sort of build out a team, recruit a team, because obviously when I bring more and more people on board as clients on board, I do need a team around me.
I think that's a wonderful start because, I noticed today itself, one of your clients had posted something really amazing about mental health pills to normalize it.
Yeah.
Who was it? If you can just...
Yes, that's really, I'm glad you saw that. So that's Ryan Sidebottom again.
Yes, Ryan, correct.
Yeah, Ryan is a really great guy. I think that, as I said, he's very well-known cricketer. Obviously, as you'll be aware, cricket is under the microscope at the moment, for the wrong reasons, but rightly so. And it's been a challenging time for Ryan. He obviously played in that Yorkshire side that has been under the microscope, and so it's been an interesting time. It's been quite a challenging time for him. Obviously, as well, he won the T20, the first T20 World Cup. So again, over the last 5 weeks, he really was in the spotlight as the tournament was taking place. And look, Ryan is he's an incredible guy, and we're going to be doing lots of work together. I'm actually chatting to him in the morning about that. I mean, that post was incredibly honest, very brave of him to do that. If people haven't seen that, I strongly encourage them to go have a look. But again, going back to that point around giving back and using the platform that these guys have, I think when people of Ryan's profile in such a mainstream sport do things like that, it's only a good thing, and it can and hopefully will encourage others to be a bit more open about how they're feeling.
Definitely. I think because also social media helps all the athletes, they can talk more, they can have more impact on their fans, on their followings. And of course, which also means that they have to own up to that responsibility of being responsible, putting out good content, putting out, we've seen so many players, like you said, what cricket is going through in England currently. It's not very good. Racism, it's never good. We have to kick it out. How difficult or challenging is a job of an agent, Simon? Are you prepared for it?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I suppose it's ultimately down to personal relationships. There's a lot going on. I suppose when you work for a company and your clients are companies, there is a degree of separation between your job and your clients. I think that in most worlds, there is a point in the day where you almost turn off your phone and the client know not to call you. I think the amazing thing about talent management is that you get to know your client's family, their friends. You are effectively a friend as well. You're on call all day, all night, which is great. And that I'm adamant that I only want to work with good people. I think that that's a decision, right? That's a decision we all get to make. And I think that sometimes when working with companies, it's very challenging because you may have an individual at that company who's maybe not that pleasant, but there are other people who are good. Whereas in the world of talent management, when meeting talent, you very quickly can decide if you want to work with them or not. So it's very personal relationships. As I said earlier, it's sort of that does mean that there's only a certain amount of bandwidth you can have to work with a number of people. So then the way we'll build the agency out is that obviously we'll recruit other agents who will bring their own clients in, but also work on the current client list we have. And look, at the end of the day, I'm so blessed to be working in sport. I mean, we've said it earlier in this conversation. It's sort of, how bad can it be, right? It's sort of, these guys are heroes, as we've discussed, but they're also really decent people and really inspiring people. I mean, it's sort of, you forget that being surrounded by such people like this, you really can, for me selfishly, I get to learn and grow, and that is a huge benefit of this job.
Absolutely. And Simon, we're looking at a sports person from across all these sports, right? You don't have any choice.
Yeah, and obviously across men and women's sport, I think it's you've probably seen on my social media, I'm an owner of Lewes Football Club, which is the only club in the country to pay men and women the same, and that's 5 minutes down the road. So I spend a lot of time down there with Maggie, the CEO, and Charlie, one of the directors, and that's where I'm at INI, and I've got a huge appetite to do more in women's sport. I suppose that the truth of the matter is that when I was last an agent, women's sport wasn't a big thing, so I don't really have that many contacts. So I'm very excited about working across most sports. I think at the moment my strengths are always going to be in football, rugby union, rugby league, and cricket. But as time goes on, more sports will open up. I think we're incredibly lucky that we've got a World Cup next year, at the end of next year again. So we know what that does to galvanize nations and get the world excited. So I think it's there'll be a number of sports that probably I don't have that much knowledge about. Obviously, Olympic years. It's funny, really funny actually. When I was in 2012, when I was an agent, I ended up looking after a guy called Peter Wilson, who won gold medal in the clay pigeon shooting. And yeah, and I hadn't, obviously I'd had no experience of working with anyone from clay pigeon shooting before. But funny enough, Peter and I spoke today for the first time in 8 years. He called me up and we're going for lunch in a couple of weeks. But just really interesting how, the journey we went on for 2 years after London 2012, an unknown guy won a gold medal at the Olympics in the clay pigeon shooting. And then for 2 years was sort of doing work with some of the biggest brands in the world. So yeah, that really excites me. And going into new sports, I had a call yesterday with some guys in Sweden who are heavily involved in paddle tennis. Now, again, I'll hold my hands up. I don't know much about paddle tennis, but the enthusiasm with which these guys were talking and the broadcasters and brands are getting involved in that sport, I was just mind blown. So that, yeah. And look, obviously, I'm sure esports will present itself down the line to me as well. So yeah, it's really exciting. And again, I just love learning. I love meeting people, and yeah, it's a really good industry to be in for learning effectively.
So Simon, safe to say that your entire focus is going to be on your new baby now.
Yeah, I think so. It's difficult, isn't it? Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, I've got no involvement at all with the day-to-day running of Dark Horses anymore. I have a really good check-in occasionally with Melissa and some of the team. But yeah, I think for me now, I'm sort of 100% focused on Hero. It's, as I said, it's a really exciting time to be getting into things, especially with the World Cup next year. And yeah, I suppose start of next year, hopefully I'll be able to make a couple of big announcements around some new signings. But yeah, it's and also as well, as you approach the festive period, there's so much sport on. It's all consuming. So yeah, it's really exciting, and it will be all consuming for me.
Absolutely. And also talking about these athletes, Simon, athletes also come with their own challenges. All the athletes, they might not have a good period. There are always ups and downs. And I'm sure you being an agent for such a long time, you already have been through clients who've gone through such stages. And do you think like our mental, are people giving enough importance to mental health? Athletes.
It's a really good question. And I think that, again, it's good because the taboo subject, it's no longer a taboo subject, is it? And I think that one of the big things we're going to be doing with our talent is really helping them in this space. I think there's a big thing around preparing professional athletes for retirement. I've worked with a lot of athletes after retirement, and they weren't really ready for what was going to happen when they stopped their sport. So the earlier that I can have the conversation with them, help putting things in place, help the transition, help them prepare for the transition. And that's not financially, that's emotionally. You imagine the sort of going from the adulation of playing in front of 10, 20, 30,000 people to suddenly stopping playing, and then what happens? So that's something that I'm really going to be shining a light on. A part of that will also be around what we're calling sort of mentorship. We'll be introducing our talent to leaders in various industries to enable our talent to go and learn more industries, because obviously just by their very nature, being at the top of their game within certain sports, a lot of them haven't actually completed education. So they've been taken out of education at an early age and been told to focus on their sport. But obviously when they get to, the early 30s, they have massive blind spots around, what actually can I do now for the next 40 years? So yeah, that's a big thing we're really going to be focusing on. And I think that we'll be able to really help our clients in that space.
Absolutely. I mean, you put it right that, sometimes athletes are so confused because all their life they spend in training and, practicing and playing matches. And all of a sudden when it stops, they don't have a clue what to do next. And we've seen many, many become sports pundits and, they start their own academies. And I think the crux is whoever spends so much time in sports wants to be connected with sports in some way or the other. So we've always seen these athletes ultimately venturing into something which is within the sports realm.
Yeah.
What else can you tell about Hero? Are you also going to look after the sponsorship deals, etc., etc.?
Yeah, so a big part of what we do will obviously be advising around their actual playing contracts and what they're doing on a day-to-day basis on the pitch, but a big part will also be off the field. So yeah, look, we've got very good contacts at brands, so we'll be helping align talent with appropriate brand partnerships. That then leads to broadcast deals. And as you know, there's so many places now, not just terrestrial television, but YouTube, podcasts, where talent can live. So that's really exciting. And it's about, I suppose, not only creating the right opportunities, but saying no to the wrong opportunities, because these guys with the level of, and girls, and the level of fame they've got, they get a lot of inbound requests. So it's filtering out the ones that will work for them and the ones that won't. And I think a lot of it is having a long-term strategic plan in place, because it's very easy to say yes to things that may pay well on a short term, but actually, are they doing good for your brand in the long term? So yeah, that's very much, each client will sit down, we'll have we'll map out a strategy, we'll understand what they really want to do. Part of that will be around, as I mentioned earlier, aligning them with charities, in some cases even helping them set up a foundation, and then building a sort of family of brands around them that are appropriate and actually aligned with what their purpose is as people.
That's perfect. Sounds great, Simon. And apart, I have a separate question for you, which is not with regards to the agency. Yeah. Because you mentioned, you're a founder of a club where they give equal salaries to both men and women.
Yeah.
And in the past decade, I would say, or maybe 5-6 years, conversation about women in sport and gender parity has really gone up. And there's a lot of focus on inclusion and diversity within the workplace.
Yeah.
But from your experience, because you worked across multiple brands and sporting organizations, do you think it's being carried out, it's being executed well, or is it just a facade? Is it just superficial, and more can be done by the organizations and brands, etc.?
Great question. Look, there always more can be done. I think absolutely this is not the time to sort of move back into a sort of lower gear. We've got to keep moving forward. I think what's really exciting with what I'm witnessing at Lewes Football Club is the energy and enthusiasm behind it. And I think that it's going to be hard, because obviously in professional sport, there's obviously arguments around, oh, well, there aren't as many people watching, but that's all changing. In rugby, they had a world record attendance at the weekend. In football, attendances are flying up. So, in the next 2-3 years, we are going to see women's football and rugby, especially in this country. The audience was a rocket. So professional sport, I think it's inevitable. There's excitement. There's brands who want to help move it forward. In the actual workplace, I personally believe it will be a little slower. It's having the right people making the right decisions in leadership, and that's the key. And so, yeah, I think it's an exciting time, but it's absolutely not time to take our eye off it. If anything, we need to sort of move into the gears a bit more.
Absolutely. Simon. Okay, I think I've asked most of the questions, unless you have anything from your end to maybe tell me if something I've missed, or something more you would like to talk about.
I think we've covered most of things. As I said, it's quite a strange position, because I'm sort of launching an agency with some clients already. So it's sort of, and you're the first interview I've done, so I'm not really sure whether I should be talking about work they're doing, but I guess over the coming months that'll come out anyway. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, of course. As you move forward, you'll perhaps the more branches.
Yeah, and also I think I'm a big believer in showing what we've done rather than saying what we're going to do. It's all very well saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but actually it's like,
you're brilliant. I mean, with what you've done with Dark Horses and your club, I mean, I won't be surprised if you pull this off amazingly.
You've just got to deliver, haven't you? I'd rather tell people about what we've done than what we're going to do.
Definitely, but that's what I'm trying to say. Like you will do brilliantly, because you've set an example previously where you just started Dark Horses and you just took it like
Well, we
as
had
a,
a lot of luck along the way.
yeah, but well done. I mean, the kind of, even now, the kind of campaigns, and because everything is so holistic. It
Yeah.
encompasses everything. Your brand, it's not just one aspect of anything. I
Yeah.
think that's what I think that's why it's one of the most reputable, most
Yeah.
esteemed brand. And it's people think it's old, but when I tell them no, it's
Yeah.
really like it's not
Yeah.
very old. It's something they've
Yeah.
recently started. I remember because when I was with the drum,
Yeah.
that's what you guys had started out,
So
and
yes,
it's
that's right.
great.
Weren't you? I remember now. Yeah. So where, I don't even know, where do you live? Where are you based?
Right now, I'm in India because of COVID,
Yeah.
and I think it's going to get worse, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
of
I mean, I'm
what's
trying to sort of, is it bad there then? Is everyone getting a bit?
no, it's improving. It's improved, but this new virus has
Yeah.
again caused a start. Let me just stop the recording. 1
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
Just let me do that.
Yeah.